All right, so as we have been talking about the $15 minimum wage and whether or not it was going to be included in the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that Joe Biden's administration was pushing for, we've been kind of focusing in on a couple different players in the situation that have been standing in the way of that $15 minimum wage. Namely, the two biggest ones have been Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. I personally, in my coverage of this, have been really focused more so on Joe Manchin. I guess I don't really know why. Maybe because he's been more vocal about his opposition to the $15 minimum wage. And we've kind of been talking about how Joe Manchin is the sort of new Mitch McConnell, and how really, I mean, at least in my opinion, that he is the biggest, most corrupt piece of shit in the Democratic Party in the Senate. But with that being said, and with my hatred of Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona is somehow making a power play here to be that position, to be the worst, most corrupt piece of shit in the entire Democratic Party in the Senate, because she pulled this stunt yesterday when voting no on Bernie Sanders' amendment to include the $15 minimum wage. So this is basically what had everybody riled up and mad at Kyrsten Sinema yesterday, showing up to cast her vote and doing a little cutesy, ooh, let me do my little lean in, and oh yeah, I'm denying working poor people a living wage. Ooh, yeah, look at me. This is disgusting, okay? I mean, this really shouldn't have to be said. You can read into body language however you want, but I think most people are seeing this, right? And even though it's a subjective thing to look at this type of thing, I think that it's fair to say that a normal senator would not, if they were casting such a serious vote that would have implications directly on tens of millions of people's livelihoods, would not be doing it in this type of way where you're doing that little cutesy thumbs down as if you're almost gloating about the fact that you're denying tens of millions of people a living wage. This is really, I mean, we talked about the policy aspects of this and why it's absolutely absurd that the Democratic Party couldn't get this passed in the first place. But to then go on top of that and to rub it in people's faces like this is just taking it to an entirely different level. And so, for that reason, I think that this is perfectly fine to criticize, right? Nothing too crazy to criticize somebody doing this, who is blocking an overwhelmingly popular policy that her state overwhelmingly favors, that the other senator in Arizona, Mark Kelly, also voted for, which is just another piece of this that's absolutely mind-blowing. Kyrsten Sinema used to be a Green Party, like, super leftist socialist, almost self-identifying socialist, but we've, come to find out that really that was all just rhetoric, and she never really believed in a socialist agenda at all. She was just using it to get elected, and when she figured out, hey, I probably won't be able to find power if I'm running as a socialist candidate, she just completely switched gears. So we know who she is. She is a chameleon that is really just searching for power and attention, obviously. But of course, this is what they rolled out in defense of this, right? In the era of identity politics, with the Democratic Party now using identity politics in many circumstances. We've been talking about how they are going to be using this as an excuse and have been so far. We saw this with Neera Tanden when people made substantive criticisms of Neera Tanden and her corruption and her foreign policy positions, how the Democratic Party was saying, oh, well, that's sexist and racist if you're attacking her. Or if you criticize Joe Biden's foreign policy, if you criticize the fact that he nominated a board member of Raytheon to lead the Department of Defense, then, suddenly we're like, or to lead the Pentagon, then suddenly you're a racist because Lloyd Austin happens to be black, right? So these are the identity politics that they've been playing, or that the Democratic Party likes to play. And of course, after people have been criticizing Sinema for doing that exaggerated thumbs down, this is what her team said in response. Sinema's office responded to a question about the gesture by making the absurd claim that the inquiry is sexist. Commentary about a female senator's body language, clothing, or physical demeanor does not belong in a serious media outlet, Hannah Hurley, a spokesperson for Sinema, told the Huffington Post. So, in other words, if you criticize the fact that she did a, exaggerated, sarcastic thumbs down in her vote that she was casting, then you're a sexist. You are a sexist. So this is, I really shouldn't even have to explain why this is ridiculous, okay? This is obviously not sexist. There's nothing gendered about the criticism here. The criticism is you are blocking an overwhelmingly popular piece of legislation, okay? You have no good explanation substantively why you're opposing it. And then on top of that, you're gloating in people's faces as you're voting it down and preventing tens of millions of people from attaining anything close to a living wage. So that's the criticism. That's the substantive criticism. Now, does that have anything to do with gender? No, of course it doesn't have anything to do with gender, and of course it's not sexist, and it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous to claim that it is, but of course, because they have nothing substantive to reply in this situation, that's what they resort to. So, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it on why the minimum wage is ridiculous. Take Kyrsten Sinema back when she was a, apparent lefty. A full-time minimum wage, this is from 2014, a full-time minimum wage earner makes less than $16,000 a year. This one's a no-brainer. Tell Congress to raise the wage. Well, now you are in Congress, and are you raising the wage? Are you using your position and power that you just had the opportunity to use to enact it? Because this situation hasn't changed. Okay, it's still not a living wage. They're still earning less than this amount. The minimum wage has not increased since you sent this tweet. And yet somehow now it's too radical, right? To phase in a $15 minimum wage by 2025, which by the way, by 2025, it's probably not even going to be a living wage then. So this is a compromise on top of a compromise. But somehow that's still too radical for her to support. Why? Because she's corrupt. And listen, I mean, this is the next step here. When is she up for election? Because we got to primary people like this. We have to primary every single one of the 8 Democrats that voted no on the $15 minimum wage to be included in the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. We have to primary all these people. But unfortunately, I mean, Kyrsten Sinema is a member of the U.S. Senate from Arizona. She assumed office on January 3rd, 2019. Her current term ends on January 3rd, 2025. So in other words, we really won't get a chance to hold her accountable until the time that, the minimum wage would have been being phased in anyways. So we have to keep an eye on this and make sure that when 2025 and the time comes around that we do primary Kyrsten Sinema, because she absolutely deserves to, again, alongside every single one of those other Democrats who stood in the way of the $15 minimum wage. They deserve no mercy. They deserve no hesitation in primarying them and in launching full-scale campaigns against them. They deserve all of the flack that they have gotten so far for blocking this overwhelmingly popular policy. It's really just embarrassing. It's shameful. It's not something where you should be going around gloating and doing your little dance while you're casting your vote. It's something where you should really be covering your face and hiding in the corner out of complete shame.